this is an abomination. But when we live in a fallen world, people start to understand that people hate Jesus. These leagues hate Jesus. It's not about meritocracy anymore.
Welcome back to another episode of Mic'd Up. I'm your host, David Gordon, and this week, for the month of June, which has been rebranded Pride Month by the LGBT Mafia, we have an episode about pride and sports, the gay agenda and the gay lobby in the sports leagues, in the professional sports leagues that are really big cultural drivers in America. For this episode, I have the distinct honor of being joined by Jon Root, who is a sports and faith commentator. How are you doing, Jon?
I'm doing great. Obviously, I hold sports near and dear to my heart. For people that don't know, I worked in sports for about 7-8 years before I got canceled. I was a host and reporter for the Sharks, worked for the Golden State Warriors organization, worked for NBC Sports in the Bay Area. So I've seen how Pride Month, I've seen how Pride Nights have just totally been hyper radicalized. And it's not just about gay representation anymore or marriage equality under the law. It's been totally off the rails. And I don't think anybody left, right, center, Christian, Catholic, not of a faith at all. A lot of people are just like, I don't even want to be a part of this anymore. I don't support it.
Okay, so you have experience in this industry, and you know, I think a lot of people are wondering, sports and sodomy, those are strange bedfellows. That's not a natural admixture there. There's not a natural organic nexus. How did this come to be? What was the development of the pride infiltration into American sports leagues?
It's always been a slippery slope. What I always try to tell people is you kind of give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. Look at how the alphabet, the gay alphabet has changed. It's not just LGB, it's LGBTQIA plus.
I think there's a number in there. Yeah, they have a number and a symbol in there now.
Yeah, in Canada too. I don't know. They had like LGBTQIA 1, 2 plus. Like I don't know. At this point, it's going to probably look closer to pi 1, 2, 3.14, blah 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 blah. It's going to keep going and going and going and going and going. But again, you start introducing drag queens. You start introducing transgenderism. You start celebrating body mutilation for minors. You know, you even had teams like the Detroit Tigers. They had their Pride Night last year. Part of your ticket proceeds could go to organizations that not only supported but performed gender reassignment surgery, body mutilation, irreversible body mutilation on minors. This is where they've gone now. And I know for me, I have my own personal stories to see how it's been hijacked by this radical leftist movement. And again, people need to understand this is a religion. This whole month, when they watch Pride Month just get thrown in their face, sodomy and sin and sexual perversion just shoved down people's throats, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence that we saw the Dodgers re-invite and are going to honor at their Pride Month on June 16th, that is just the tip of the iceberg. You're going to see more players try to get forced to apologize for standing up for their faith. It's going to get worse and worse. And unless we stand up and call out this nonsense, it's only going to get worse, and it's going to be running rampant through sports.
What is the agenda here? Because obviously this is not just about like acceptance and tolerance in the sense that like these people aren't going to have violence done to them for their aberrant sexual fetishes. It's not about that. It's about something more sinister, obviously, and you know this because basically all of America has capitulated on this issue. I mean, the holdouts are the minority. It used to be that even in California, you had Prop 8, being defeated by popular vote in the most liberal state in the union. People came out and voted down gay marriage. But now the people who are against gay marriage, we're in a much smaller minority. And in fact, the mob is fully on board with the entirety of the LGBT agenda. So what's this all about? Why are sports teams aggressively platforming this this ideology?
Well, people are probably wondering too, why is Bud Light going woke? Why are they partnering with a man that cosplays a woman and tries to tell women about womanhood? Why is Ford changing their trucks to rainbow? Why is Target trying to push gender mutilation on minors? Everyone's wondering, just like, your stocks are tanking. Why are you doing this? The same thing with sports leagues and teams. It's about the long game. I think basically, he's definitely not a man of faith, but he's a very, very smart individual. Dr. James Lindsay has talked about these companies and leagues and teams playing the long game because it's for ESG. This is for a potential social credit score that could be implemented later on in America that shows, hey, how much do you really care for these marginalized communities? How much do you stand up for anti-racism? How much are you standing up for the trans community? They think that it's going to get to a place where you could start trading, you could start getting more perks from the government if you show solidarity with these people groups. I'm not going to be able to give you a solid breakdown of ESG. I'm still trying to download all that information in my brain, but I think they're playing this long game. It's not just about acceptance. It's about what they think potentially could be happening in the future and how they can make money and profit off of things like transgenderism, gay marriage, and other aspects of the alphabet mafia.
Yeah, I mean, we know that a lot of these finance companies, groups like BlackRock, are attaching, lending and capital to how woke a company is, how much they fall in line with the ESG, social credit score type stuff, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So companies, even though they're alienating a lot of their base, perhaps, they're willing to risk that for what they see as long-term gain. And here's a spoiler alert, that will be a future Mic'd Up episode. I think that is, they're playing the long game and they're looking out for their bottom dollar in a really cynical and destructive way. But can you give us, what's the breakdown of these leagues? Are there any holdouts? Are all of the leagues complicit in the woke ideology, in the LGBT, gay mafia, homosexualist agenda? Or do any of the leagues, do any of the commissioners, have a conscience?
So I think what we've seen from the NHL specifically, I spent the most of my career in the NHL. You had Commissioner Bettman that came out after James Reimer, a backup goalie for the San Jose Sharks, said, Pride Night, I'm not going to support that. I'm not going to wear the Pride jersey. I'm not going to tape up my stick in rainbow. He said, because of my faith, I'm not going to do this. Commissioner Bettman came out, and that was after Ivan Provorov from the Philadelphia Flyers ended up not wearing the Pride jersey as well. So like a lot of this, strong stance from athletes of faith came from the National Hockey League. And Gary Bettman, the commissioner, said, we're rethinking whether we want to do this. We're hearing some people in the league office. We're hearing athletes and coaches say, like, this has been kind of like hijacked. This is not really worth it anymore. But also you saw the Tampa Bay Rays. They had multiple pitchers last year that said that they were not going to wear the pride flag on their jersey, stating their faith. You're now seeing some of the players from the Dodgers. Clayton Kershaw, I felt like it was kind of he didn't condemn the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence or say anything about the LGBTQ community. He basically just said, like, I don't stand for people mocking my faith, but I'm going to have a Christian and family faith day. So, like, that's a good thing. Blake Trinan went hard on this. You have Trevor Williams, a pitcher for the Nationals, decided to come out and condemn what the Dodgers are doing. You obviously have other athletes like Taylor Bass. I'm pretty sure I'm saying his name right, from the Blue Jays. He's
Anthony,
a pitcher for
Anthony, right?
Oh, Anthony Bass, excuse me. He came out and he apologized after he shared a video about why we should, from a biblical perspective, boycott places like Target. And then he totally cowered to the LGBTQ mob. And I will always say, like, it is a very, very difficult thing to come out and say, I am against the LGBTQ religion. I am against the LGBTQ mob. And he got forced to apologize. I think it was a cowardice move. But at the same time, I hope that us as people of faith can show we are here to encourage you and back you up when you make a strong stance like this. Share those social media posts, send them messages, send emails to these teams and leagues and say, like, we are not about the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. We support Anthony Bass. We support Clayton Kershaw. We support James Reimer. Like, show that you actually do care and don't just sit back and be like, oh, great, I'm glad somebody spoke up. They need people in their corner, and there is major strength in numbers.
Yeah, I want to get into the specifics of the players in a minute. For right now, I want to go and look at this like 30,000-foot view. And a lot of the pushback from conservatives has been, oh, we don't want ideology in sports. You know, we just want to watch sports. My problem with teams like the Dodgers, with the leagues that are pushing this stuff from the top down, is that they're now kind of proselytizing to us in sports, and we just need to keep sports. PragerU is like, we need to keep politics out of sports. And to a certain extent, I agree. The purpose of sports is to perform athletic feats with a high degree of facility and skill. But fine. If we're going to take that, what's most important, though, is that we keep evil out of sports, right? It's not, I wouldn't mind if they're using sports to proclaim the gospel, because sports, although they're about performing athletic feats with aplomb, ultimately they're tailored towards virtue and discipline and, you know, masculinity, manliness, achieving a higher end. So if we're going to proselytize with the Christian gospel, with truth, with good politics, that would be one thing. I wouldn't object out of sheer principle to that at all. That would be something I think we could get behind. But what's happening now is the sports leagues have made them a mouthpiece. They made themselves mouthpieces for affirmative evil. Isn't that the problem? And why aren't conservatives calling that out? Why are we being so keen on saying, well, we just need to keep all politics out of sports? No, we need to keep evil out of everywhere, don't we?
There's multiple different answers to that. Number one, these leagues and a lot of these teams hate God, plain and simple. They do, and they've shown that. If they try to say, no, like we're inclusive to the Christians and people of faith, they have not shown it at all. The fruit that they bear is not good. We know specifically from data, even before this last Super Bowl, said, do you like politics in sports? 84% of Americans said, I want politics out of sports. I mean, this is left, right, and center. This isn't just, the conservative base is so angry and in an uproar about all this stuff. No, there's evil running rampant. And what did sports used to be? It used to be an outlet away from the nonsense of the world, politics. Now ESPN is Clay Travis from Outkick the Coverage calls ESPN MS ESPN. In a lot of ways, they've just become a political news network. They are promoting people like Will Thomas, a biological male that competed with females, and celebrating that man that pretends to be a woman during Women's History Month. And then now, I'll always call Leah Will. People can get mad at me for dead naming, but that's his name.
Oh, I was joking. I'm a dead namer from way back.
And little snippet too. I was actually out there for the women's swimming championship, so I was there in person, and you kind of see just the shift that's been happening, and how you see these leagues that are just saying, like, you know what, we stand by this group, and we believe this to be moral. We believe this is equitable. We believe that this is about equality, and we believe this is about inclusion, and they believe they're on the right side of history, and they will do anything to stand by it. And until you have people of faith stand up, like conservatives as well, just say, like, I don't want this around my kids. I don't want them interacting with this sexually depraved content. Like, this is an abomination. But when we live in a fallen world, people start to understand that people hate Jesus. These leagues hate Jesus. It's not about meritocracy anymore. Last thing I'll say here is when people talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, that normally does not apply to sports. It's the best person gets the job as a coach, and the best person gets the job on the field. We've only seen one starting white cornerback in the National Football League.
Jason Sehorn? Is that who we're talking about? Is that Giants?
No, there was one on the now called the Washington Commanders. I'm going blank on his name right now, but I don't care about representation on a football field or a basketball court or a soccer field. It's about the best person that can play should play. But now with this pride stuff, it's going to be, hey, our next generation of sports fans, we're going to indoctrinate them into this and believe that they are the moral side of history, and we're going to use our platform to push it on them. It's disgusting and evil.
Right. So it seems like there are two prongs at work here. Number one is that groups are thinking cynically, playing the long game, as you said. Is this going to benefit me if I get on board with the modernist ideology? Is it going to help me financially in the future? Sure. But it also seems, from what you're saying now, and I agree, that there are a lot of people that have really infiltrated into these organizations that are true believers, that we've entered the realm of ideological liberalism, where they're now saying, oh yeah, sure, this is going to alienate my fans. Sure, this might even alienate players in the locker room and cause locker room problems. But we're going to do it anyway because it's the right thing to do to promote sodomy, which as Christians we know, cries to heaven for vengeance. It's one of the peccata clementia, the screaming sins, along with like depriving a workman of his wages and whatnot. Things that are roundly condemned in Scripture. It seems like they think this evil is good and that they need to aggressively promote it. We're not just in the realm of tolerance anymore, even though you shouldn't tolerate evil, you shouldn't abide evil, it should be looked down upon, it should be socially taboo, it has no place among us. But we're not in the place of tolerance anymore. These Pride Nights are a celebration of sin, at least it seems to me, and you have experience in the industry. Is it more tolerance, or is it more a celebration of these aberrant, evil, wicked, disordered, counternatural lifestyles?
The people that scream tolerance are the most intolerant people in America and around the world. I know I spoke at San Francisco State University a couple weeks after Riley Gaines, who tied Will Thomas for 5th place at the swimming championships, and she's obviously utilized her platform great for Jesus Christ and standing up for women's sports. I mean, I had people there that called me hateful, called me bigoted. And you need to ask these people why. Why am I considered hateful? Why do you consider me a bigot? The same thing for when athletes finally stand up and coaches stand against this nonsense. What we see here is it's a full indoctrination of this ideology. It's no longer just, like I said earlier, Pride Night started as some sort of gay representation and equality of marriage under the law. That's what it was. I remember when I started working in sports professionally, that was around like 2012. There was definitely commercials I saw specifically in the Bay Area about like, don't say gay. They didn't want that word used anymore. And it was about being loving to your neighbor and don't use this as a derogatory term. And then now I saw my last year with the Sharks, what they did during they used to call it Hockey is for Everyone Month, which is basically just a Pride Month in disguise, and they have a Hockey is for Everyone night, which is a Pride night in disguise. Now they've fully gone on board and say, yep, this is a Pride night. We've been hiding that with some pretty clever wording for years. They took a biological female that played for the Junior Sharks program and paraded her in front of almost 20,000 fans because she now believes she's a boy. And that got celebrated on that Hockey is for Everyone night. For me, I know I was always respected by my bosses. I was never forced to wear rainbow gear. I was never forced to say anything online supporting the LGBTQ community. I respected that from them, and I really appreciate that from them to this day. But once I saw that was 2019, I was like, this is where things are going off the rails. We are now openly celebrating gender dysphoria, and everybody's expected to stand in line, stand up, applaud this, support this, because it's not just good enough to just feel like, oh, I kind of just tolerate them. You now need to accept them, and you now need to be an ally. And that's what we're seeing, and people cannot fall in line. People need to stand together, stand by your faith, and have a good apologetic for your faith. You can't just say, oh, that just doesn't go along with my religion. Tell people why.
Right. Right, and don't make it so confessional in nature, too. I feel like a lot of these guys retreat into the confessional. They retreat into, oh, these are my beliefs personally, so I want to be respected for my belief system, even though you can have yours. It's like, no, the Christian gospel is the truth. I don't want it to coincide with some other, quote-unquote, relative truth. There is no relative truth. Truth is absolute, and I won't celebrate falsehood. It doesn't seem like there's been pushback like that because people are afraid, and they're recurring to the very theme of disordered tolerance that really got us into the mess in the first place. The fact is, we have truth, and we shouldn't really tolerate untruth. But let me ask you this, because there seem to be supernatural forces at work here. And if you look at this from really a scriptural perspective, and if you're looking at salvation history, at all of what's playing out right now through the lens of salvation history, this seems diabolical and anti-Christic in a way that it's biblical. You know, we have the celebration of pride using an imperfect rainbow, you know, the 6-colored rainbow, not 7, because 7 is the number for covenanting oneself. So God used the rainbow as a sign of covenanting himself. And we're using all these biblical symbols and these biblical words, and even the number 6 for the 6th month, June, is when Pride is celebrated. Is something, I mean, do you think there's something obviously supernatural going on here? Is this like fitting into the narrative of salvation history in a way we're going to look back and perhaps connect some dots in 200, 300 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can look into the numerology based off all this stuff and see, like, you know, what are the points that we're seeing that might be leading to evil and be evil in plain sight. I mean, plain and simple, we know that God created us male and female. Like, God does not screw up. That's why Christians shouldn't be using pronouns. It somehow, some way says that God might have messed up. And then when we see evil running rampant like this, we're reminded that in the Word, God gave people over to their sinful desires. And that seems like what's happening here. People are calling good evil and evil good. This is 100% biblical, but people need to remember, especially during Pride Month here and what we're seeing with all this Pride Month nonsense in sports, we still are called to love. But that love is not an acceptance of a sinful lifestyle. That love is not just beating people over the head with the Bible. This is an incredible opportunity for people of faith to show that if you're really looking for hope, if you're really looking for deliverance, if you're really looking for purpose and value, you will find it in Jesus Christ. You will find it in his word. And this is a spiritual battle. We don't fight against flesh and blood. Yes, there's plenty of times we're in this culture war and We think that these people hate us. They think that we hate them. I mean, that's what I'm seeing right now, even with The Chosen. I know that's kind of blown up on social media itself. Like, I asked them, like, why do you have a pride flag on set? You share this in a YouTube video days before Pride Month, and you're supposed to be the show about honoring the authentic Jesus. And now you have actors on that show defending it. I mean, we're seeing things just fall apart. Yeah. But that's why we see in the Word, there's a remnant. That's it. Like, this is not going to be masses of people running through the gates of heaven. You know, we really have to stand strong. And if we believe that love is an acceptance of a sinful lifestyle, we have totally disregarded the gospel and really have a bad understanding of Jesus and his ministry.
Absolutely, 100%. And we have to recognize that there are posers among us, among the nominal faithful. You know, and Jesus Christ says this himself, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father. We have to understand that. And as you say, yes, it's an act of love to proclaim the truth, which is why we've always recognized as a spiritual work of mercy, admonishing the sinner, counseling the doubtful, and all of that. Now, I'd like to pivot into maybe some of the specifics of what's going on right now. The elephant in the room, of course, going into Pride Month and what's been leading headlines has been the Dodgers debacle. Can you give just the audience here, some who might not follow sports closely, what's going on with the Dodgers and these trans nuns, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, that they are now platforming and celebrating on June 16th?
So for everybody, they need to know, again, that Pride Nights have just changed drastically. It's not about just a gay representation, not just about equality under the law for gay marriage. Now it's just pushing to transgenderism and celebration of drag. This is sexual in nature. It's perverse. It's obviously against the word. Like, a man should not be wearing a woman's clothes. We see that just plain and simple and clear as day in the word. The Dodgers have their Pride Night, and they're going to celebrate and honor sexual depravity, and they have specific groups that they want to not just celebrate, but honor with awards. There's a community award that they want to give to the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. And the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence are out of San Francisco, and they dress up, obviously in drag, as nuns. And it's obviously an offense to Catholics. They have held a hunky Jesus Easter service mocking Christ in San Francisco, and they're being celebrated as some sort of great community advocate, people that really care about the community and want the best for the community. They disinvited them after there was some uproar. I thought it was an unbelievable situation because Christians said, this ain't happening. Like, you have a Pride Night, sure, have a Pride Night, but this is offensive to the nth degree. Like, this is mocking Christ. Like, we will have no part of it. So the Dodgers said this group is no longer invited, and then they catered and cowered to the LGBTQ mob and re-invited them. So they're going to be there June 16th at Dodger Stadium. But the way I saw that is, obviously, the Dodgers, in the first place, uninviting them, shocking, especially in this day and age. Re-inviting them, not that shocking. But what I'm planning on with, we got Christians, we got Catholics, we got conservatives, we got people of faith in general. We're gathering June 16th to do a prayer walk to Dodger Stadium. We're going to be meeting at Grand Park around 4 p.m. that night and walking to Dodger Stadium. We're not going to have speeches about, all this sexual depravity and going fire and brimstone. Like, people, yes, will hear the truth. But I think a peaceful response to this with truth as well, because I want to be a good steward of the opportunity that God's provided us. We're going to be hand in hand walking up to Dodger Stadium. We'll be at the corner of Vince Scully and Stadium Way, trying to have conversations with people, encouraging them not to go into the stadium and not support this nonsense at all. But the beauty of this also too is Blake Trinan, again, he's a pitcher for the Dodgers. Clayton Kershaw, they both spoke out against it. Trevor Williams, that plays for the Washington Nationals, has spoke out against it. And this is a golden opportunity for people of faith to come together, and even people that just care about, drag not being around their kids and don't care for the sexual perversion, people of faith or not, coming together and saying, we will have none of this. We're standing up. God will not be mocked. My kid will not be subject to this depravity. And hopefully it turns into a fruitful experience that the Dodgers can understand this is not okay.
Well, I think with this, it's being framed as anti-Catholicism. And, obviously that's bad and that shouldn't exist. But again, we are in the middle of something that's much greater than anti-Catholicism. It's anti-Christ. It's anti-Christic. It's blasphemous and it's sacrilegious. So recurring to this idea of anti-Catholicism, like we're still playing by the rules of like, oh, that's intolerant. You have to, because society is supposedly morally relativistic, you have to, say every ideology or like confessional or creed is the same, and no one can have any disparaging words for a different creed. Obviously, I'm Catholic. I believe in the Catholic Church, and it angers me when there's anti-Catholicism. But what angers me much, much more is when there's blasphemy and mockery of Christ. And what we're seeing with these heinous men dressing up as religious sisters is a hatred of God. They founded their stupid little group on Easter many years ago, and they perpetually during the holy season, during Lent, they have Stations of the Cross where they mock the Stations of the Cross and they use it for sexual purposes. They mock Christ, they mock Our Lady, the Mother of Christ, and they have condom masses. They drink yogurt out of pitchers to make it appear, with sexual innuendo. They have open hostility towards God. And I feel like some of these people, Clayton Kershaw, who speak up and they're like, well, this is not good because it's, it's anti-Christian and I think we just need to love everybody equally. No. It's anti-divine, right? Isn't that the point here? Is that being lost in the news cycle? Is that being lost in the cultural commentary that's taking place?
That's where people obviously we can always play armchair quarterback, but if you claim to be Christian and your God is being mocked, you need to go hard on this issue. That does not mean that you're trying to attack people personally, but you are going to say, what we see here is evil. This is 100% evil, and this is not acceptable. And if you're going to make these decisions, speaking to the Dodgers and other leagues and teams, you are saying that evil is okay. That evil is permissible. This group is doing a strip tease while someone pretends to be Jesus on a cross. They have sisters, and one of their names is Eateth My Flesh. It's a slap in the face to faith. And it is 100% anti-God. And that's what we're seeing here too, is it's been totally radicalized. If Christians are not going to stand up now, and if we are going to mince our words and try to beat around the bush, we're going to get annihilated years from now. And this is only going to get worse. They're going to be like, well, Clayton Kershaw, he just kind of wants to be nice to everybody and doesn't want to go too hard on this issue. Call it out. Call a spade a spade.
It's offensive to justice, is it not? You have an obligation to act, but you have the soy boy Christianity where it's like, well, I just want to talk about what's positive about everybody. I don't want to condemn. And this is what Clayton Kershaw said. He said he doesn't want to condemn these trans so-called nuns. He just wants to talk about what's positive about Christianity. Well, part of the Christian message is condemning evil, is rebuking evil. We're told, rebuke thy brother. This is part of the gospel. So we have all these guys that are marching along to the gospel of nice, Why won't they speak up? Is it cowardice?
I don't think they really understand their Bible. I don't think they really understand Jesus. Because Jesus, when he met the woman at the well, woman caught in adultery, met with the tax collectors, he never said, you know what, I'm happy to meet with you, not really down with the way you live your life. You know, you might not be as bad as this person. No, he said, go and sin no more. Mm-hmm. He met people where they were at, but he loved them way too much to keep them there. And I think if people understood that Jesus' love was not an acceptance of a sinful lifestyle, they would start speaking up more. You'd have people like Clayton Kershaw that say, you know, now I understand that Jesus wasn't just always talking about the positive lovey-dovey stuff. That's what people now view Jesus as a guy that was just kind of accepting. He was tolerant. He was a nice teacher, a good guy. And I appreciate his sacrifice. Like if you're dumbing Jesus down to that, you're dumbing down the divine, and you have absolutely no clue the way that he lived his life and did his ministry, and the way that he expects Christians to emulate him as well. But when Christians put Jesus in this box that he's just kind of like a go with the flow guy that's just kind of nice, and people understand their sin, so I don't need to talk about sin. Like you see that from huge prominent Protestant preachers that are saying, like, I don't know if I really need to talk about sin. Yes, you do. We need people leaving church at times feeling unbelievably convicted, not because the preacher feels like he's got some moral or spiritual superiority. No, because we are sinful, fallen people.
Yeah, the devil wants you to have a quiet conscience when you're in sin, and God wants you, the Holy Spirit moves and stirs your conscience when you're in sin. And he gives you peace when you're not in sin, but the devil is trying to give you peace when you are in sin. There's this great spiritual battle that's playing out. But I'm always told that athletes are tough, that athletes are really brave, but we have absolute silence in the face of this. We have all these so-called Christian athletes that, you know, bless themselves, make the sign of the cross when they score a touchdown, but then their organizations are pushing the most heinous, vile filth. The NFL is cuddled up with the Trevor Project, which is grooming young men to be homosexuals. And they're partnered up with that. Their teams are in cahoots with this evil group. And not a peep from the same guys who are like, you know, I scored a touchdown. God wanted that. Praise be to God. DK Metcalf, you know, faith. I view football as a medium for sharing the faith. It's like, well, your team's pushing a bunch of pride stuff, and I haven't heard a peep out of you. I'm told athletes are tough, but apparently jocks are cowards. Is that it?
Well, I think there's a lot of CNOs out there. We hear the term in politics, rhinos, Republican in name only. There's some Christians in name only. You see people like Steph Curry. Just look at the Rolling Stone article. He's unsure about abortion. He's unsure if that's wrong or not. And he promotes people like Stacey Abrams that believe that when you hear a baby's heartbeat, when you go to get a checkup, when there's a pregnant woman in that office, she feels like it's manufactured. And then how in the world are we now seeing something like this Dodgers situation, and how many MLB players have stood up? Three players. That's it. There's a lot of people that love trying on Jesus like it's a fresh T-shirt and then taking it off when it's not advantageous for them. They'll cower and they'll decide, you know, this is not worth it. And I think it comes down to, I don't know every single situation. And again, I know in this day and age, athletes just have wanted to be athletes. Yes. But now they're expected to be some political puppets, and they're supposed to talk about every single social and cultural issue, which is nonsense. I think we saw that during COVID a lot. Like, we don't need to ask LeBron James about police brutality. That guy's an idiot and has no idea what he's talking about. And he says that black people are getting hunted every single time they leave their door. And you don't have media members that are asking him, prove it. Yeah. Like, we're now having all these athletes, they need to stand up for stuff. But if you're a Christian, that is your foundation. Your foundation is not conservatism. Your foundation is not your political party or your favorite candidate. If God is being mocked and your faith is being mocked, woe to you that is just going to stand to the side and say, you know what, I'd rather serve the master of money than serve my master in heaven.
Right, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It is like 3, maybe 4 that have come out against this Dodgers debacle, this Dodgers blasphemy, this slap in the face of God. It's a handful of athletes in a very large league, and which is overwhelmingly, these athletes are overwhelmingly Christian, and it's just silence and complicity, and they get a free pass. And the ones that do speak out, the Clayton Kershaw statement was a travesty. It was awful. It was gutless. It was weak. And Anthony Bass, as you mentioned earlier in the show, has spoken out. He gave props to the Target boycott, to the Bud Light boycott, and now he got in trouble with his organization. And it was just like, I'm sorry. He issued the weak, mealy-mouth apology and walked back his position. And now the manager, John Schneider, is going to be requiring him to take steps beyond apologizing. Yep. So it's not just that these guys won't speak up. When they do speak up, then they're censured. They're in trouble. There's professional ramifications, but when you have athletes on the left speaking up and they're advocating for pride, they're advocating for Marxist groups like Black Lives Matter or Antifa, they're getting plaudits, they're getting awards, they're getting pats on the back. So we are now, are we in a world? Have the sports leagues become so woke that they are actually basically officially anti-Christian?
Yeah, we're at a tipping point, and they've shown that they're anti-Christian. And when you have Christians that decide to cower, it just shows that these leagues and these teams and the overarching evil is winning. They know that, hey, if we push this guy, if we push Anthony enough, he's going to cower. If we threaten him enough. And the crazy part is, too, you see the Dodgers, once they re-invited the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, they said that they were going to take weeks to kind of study up, to research, to understand this community better. They want people like Anthony Bass to take inclusivity training. They never say, we are going to take a couple weeks to dive into the Word of God and understand where these people are coming from. They will never, ever, ever do it. And it's only going to get worse and more anti-Christ if we don't stand up. Like, this is an incredible moment. And I think the reason that we're at this place is because we have way too many comfortable Christians. For way too long, they've been able to sit in their lazy boys and chill in the pew and say, I'm happy to live in America. And if there's any privilege in America, it's American privilege. Thinking that when wartime comes, you hope that somebody picks up the sword and fights for you. As Christians, we're supposed to put on the full armor of God every single day. And a lot of people, they don't even want to jump into the fight. And there's also other people that are trying to condemn people that are in the fight, saying, why are you fighting during wartime? It's kind of like oxymoronic. We're in a war. We need to fight. And our love is not going to be an acceptance of lifestyle. Our love is going to be putting on the belt of truth and letting people know the truth of the gospel. And if we decide not to do that, it's going to get worse, and it's going to get to a point where no one is of faith is going to want to take their kids or their family or themselves to games during the month of June. I think
you just hit the nail on the head with something, which is we have this circular firing squad where you have all of the smug, priggish Christians where if you denounce, sodomy, or blasphemy too harshly, and you denounce the sheer evil that we're confronted with a tone that doesn't appeal to 72-year-old church women, then you actually get condemned by your own side in the midst of combat. Whereas our enemy, these people who hate God, who hate the gospel, are out there mocking nuns, dressing up as nuns, having hunky Jesus competitions, having sacrilegious condom masses, making fun of the Stations of the Cross, making fun of the Blessed Virgin. And they're allowed to do that with impunity. And, the people on our side are like, you just have to love them and tolerate them. And then the same people who say that nonsense on our side will turn on you if you denounce the evil with too masculine or too angry of a tone. It's pathetic. But here's the question. Why don't these athletes go nuclear and just be like, I'm not playing? Isn't that the answer? We outnumber them. The Christians outnumber the non-Christians, especially the LGBT mob, which is like 1 or 2% of people. If you really count all the sexual fetishes and dysfunctions as a group, that's 1 to 2%. We outweigh them. We have greater numbers. Why don't all the Christian athletes just say, I'm not going to play?
It's not as black and white as I think people might play it out to be, because there is a lot of allies. So while there might be a small number of people that identify as trans, we're seeing an increasing number of people that identify as gay and bisexual. And then we're also seeing an increasing number, a massive increase in numbers of allies, and especially the younger generation that are getting indoctrinated through social media and online in general to buy into this nonsense. But I think what we need to see is more boycotts. And the thing is, we saw it during COVID as well. There's a lot of young athletes and athletes that don't have the standing that people like Steph Curry, Clayton Kershaw, and other sports superstars, they don't have that platform. So if they stand up, I know this from experience. I'm not lying here. I've had conversations with athletes that I will not name that they're saying, I am desperately trying to figure out how to go about this because I just got into the league, and I might not be able to get re-signed, or I might be blackballed from the league. You got other people towards the end of their career, and they're like, hey, I want to still be able to support my family. So if I make this decision, I might not get re-signed. But I mean, this again, like, is the time. We need to encourage that, hey, if you stand up, we have your back. There is a lot of people that will stand up for you. And knowing that while we stand against these things, it's become so radical that I think some people that are a little bit more centrist will have these athletes back, because they're like, we're not down with this drag show stuff anymore. We're not down with the men parading as women. Like, no. Like, you might have some people out there that are like, I'm okay with homosexuality, or I'm okay with gay marriage. Obviously, we are not. And I think that was the slippery slope. But you have some people out there that says these extra letters in this alphabet and this radicalization and what's being pushed on my kids, I'm not down. And I would be happy to support an athlete that stands firm in his faith, in love and truth. And until people actually make that stance, I will call out Dave Roberts as well. He's the manager for the Dodgers. He claims to be Christian, and we've heard nothing, zero from that man at all.
Can you imagine him standing before the throne of Christ on his judgment, having to explain his silence in the face of outrageous sacrilege? I wouldn't want to be in that position. I don't want to be him. I don't envy that.
And that's where we've become comfortable as Americans. We think like, man, like, I can't wait till this month is over. That's not how you view this stuff. You can't just say, I can't wait till this game's over. The game's never over. You got to jump into the fight here. And if you're going to cower, you're not a good teammate, and you're not a good representative of your team. And that's the way I see faith here. It's like, you are not being a good representative of Christ. You're not being a good teammate to other Christians in this space. They desperately want to know that they have some support, and that standing against this shows that what we really stand for. We stand for Christ. Christians are not just about what we stand against. If people understand that, like, hey, here's an understanding of why we believe what we believe. And again, that goes back to, you have to have a good apologetic for your faith. You have to be able to explain this. And I think that's why we need to come alongside these athletes and coaches and let them know, hey, during this month, you're going to get an onslaught of nonsense. Here's how you explain it in your faith. Let's help you get discipled, and it will get people to hopefully understand the gospel and what we really do stand for.
Sure. No, absolutely. Great response. And it's a game of chicken. You hear all these people, you just have to have faith and trust that God is going to do the rest. But then they'll lose at the game of chicken. The organization pushes them, and then they back off. It's like, I thought you said you have faith and God will do the rest. Let God take care of you. And by the way, if you're Steph Curry or somebody that's reached that level of competency and expertise in his field, you ain't getting benched. So play a game of chicken with management. Be like, yeah, I'm your leading scorer the past 5 years in a row. Bench me. See what happens. I'll leave the team. I'll go sign elsewhere. Okay, we are up against the clock. Let me just allow you, because you've had a lot of really insightful things to say. And I know this is such a broad topic. If you would do the audience the kindness, just can you take us out on any last exhortations that you have? Anything that I haven't thought to ask that you want to get out there when Americans are grappling with this issue?
It's time for us to be bold. And I think Christians need to understand that you have the ability to make a difference, and the fight is at your doorstep. Sports is something I believe should be fought for. I think it's the greatest outlet away from politics, away from the craziness of the world. And I think nothing brings people together quite like sports. But now sports have become incredibly divisive, and sports have become, just like you've said, incredibly anti-God. And if you have leagues and teams that are punching you in the face and punching you in the gut and saying, we will mock your God, and we will reinvite groups and honor groups that mock your God, it's time to stand up. We can't cower anymore. We can't stand back. You need to write to these teams. You need to hit up these players and coaches on social media. You need to make sure that you spread the gospel truth during this month and have some conversations with people. Have some conversations with people on the other side. Join us for the prayer walk in Los Angeles if you're going to be around that time. Again, we're going to meet at Grand Park at 4 p.m. And then the walk starts at 4:30. And we're going to walk up there, and we're going to hopefully have some great conversations with people to say, here's the gospel truth. We actually do love you way more than the progressives, way more than the Dodgers. True love is not an acceptance of a sinful lifestyle. It's time to stand up, and this is an incredible opportunity. Don't feel like you get to the end of June and you wish you would have done something.
Yeah, absolutely. All these guys who like to think back and be like, I would have never apostatized during the Diocletian persecution when, I'd have my head lopped off if I professed my faith in Christ. It's like, you won't even give up your $1 million salary. You would have been the first to apostatize. Give me a break. But absolutely, please do turn up. Do show your support for Christianity, for the living God of the universe in the face of outrageous sacrilege and blasphemy. And guys, be vocal. Do something. Jon Root, thank you so much for being with us. Great episode, great discussion, and we really appreciate your time.
Of course. And last thing I'll say, too, is feel free to follow me on social media. I'm going to be sharing a lot of stuff that's going on in the sports world during Pride Month and kind of expose those things and let people know like how you can reach out to these teams, reach out to these leagues, players, and coaches, and hopefully we can make a difference for Christ this month.
100%. Thanks so much, and God bless you.
God bless.